Welcome to Wealth Matters Podcast. I have with me my good friend Ferdinand. He goes by Ferd. He's a real estate investor, mobile home park owner, MBA, and attorney focusing on solving complex real estate problems. Ferd, feel free to add.
That pretty much sums it up. Just trying to chase the next deal one at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, so Ferd, you and I have chatted quite a bit in last month or so because I was working on my own mobile home park deal, and you were more than gracious enough to help me go through the due diligence as well as guided me on all the documentation. So yeah, now I understand because after talking to you for last month or so that yes, you know mobile home park, you are a good attorney, you understand. So tell us something interesting about yourself, which is not which does not involve, attorney work or mobile home parks.
Got it. Well, a couple things I thought of on that. I mean, my name's Ferd. I'm the fourth, so I'm the same old family name.
Oh, wow.
It's a very unique name, but ironically, one time, the first house I bought, I moved next door to a guy, and his name was Ferd also. And my dad was
No.
on site, and there was three Ferds sitting there on the driveway at the same time. It's crazy. So it's pretty rare.
It is
I
very
don't
rare.
often run into people with my name. So that's kind of a unique thing. And then I'm ambidextrous, so I can use both hands for different things. So that's something unique, I guess.
Very interesting. Yes, Ferd, why did you choose to be in real estate? What made you decide that, okay, I'm an attorney, I'm already doing this. Why would you decide to jump into real estate as well?
Well, I had a job between college and then between graduate school. I had a job at Honeywell, which is
Oh, yes.
a nuclear. They make thermostats and fans, but they also
Right.
make nuclear weapons. The nuclear weapon plants in Kansas City, where I'm at. I had an internship there. My boss was going to give me a job. I had an internship. He was going to give me a full-time job. He called
Right.
me and called me in his office and said, "Hey, we're going to offer you a job tomorrow. It was going to be a pretty good job." He said, "But don't take it." I said, "Why not?" He said, "Because you're going to get stuck in the rat race." He said, "You need a," he goes, "I got a job, got a bigger job, got promoted, bigger house, bigger car. I'm
Right.
always just over broke." That's
That
what he said.
hamster wheel, right? The hamster wheel
Exactly.
keeps going on.
So he told me, "Hey, go read Rich Dad Poor Dad," which I know almost every real estate investor reads. And I took it home and I read it in one night and I mailed it to my dad. They said, "We're doing this." He read it the next day and we did it. And that was about 12 years ago. And
That's
then
amazing.
started in the single family and then eventually duplexes. And I did some legal work on lots of different real estate, more big complex commercial projects. And then I worked as a retail developer for a few years I was a junior partner on retail development. Got out of that. Luckily pre-COVID, so I don't own any. I have one retail project now, but it's pretty stable. Got rid of my retail projects and really just been focused on the mobile home park the last several years. Been in the mobile home business last 6 or 7 years, but really pretty much full time for the last 2.
Nice. So what was your very first real estate deal?
I bought a single family house next to Rockhurst University, which where I went to undergraduate and graduate school.
Oh, so New Jersey, right? New Jersey.
Jesse.
You said Rutgers, so is it New Jersey?
Oh no, Rockhurst.
Oh,
It's
sorry.
in Kansas City.
Okay.
It's different. It's a small Catholic school in Kansas City.
Got it.
So I bought a house by there, and I moved in. It was a 4-bedroom house. I had 3 buddies live with me, so I was living for free, kind of house hacking. And then I built a bedroom in the basement, and I had 4 or 5 guys there.
Nice.
And I just pushed the rents, increased the property, remodeled some stuff, and then it worked out really well. Bought a house down the street, ended up owning 5 houses on the same block. By the time I was 24 or 5, and
Wow.
it was and they were high income houses because of student housing, so it was a good deal.
That's
Recently
great.
sold them in the last couple of years to try to focus on MHP.
Wow. So why did you pick mobile home parks then?
I was my first job after grad school was as a commercial real estate analyst at Jackson County here in Kansas City, and I looked at complex real estate deals like tax incentive projects, pretty much every food group, hospitality, mixed use, multifamily, industrial, some retail, and at the time I had single family houses, and my rate of return from a percentage standpoint was much higher than theirs. But I was kind of like, well, it doesn't make any, I didn't have $10 million. Like, it's easy to double 10,000. It's hard to double 10 million. So I looked at what these big guys were making, and it wasn't that much from a percentage standpoint. And then I had my securities licenses, and I was selling stocks and bonds for a while there in grad school as well. I did that for about a year and a half. And I saw what Warren Buffett was doing. And he was the guy in stocks. And I was like, man, I'm making a higher rate. I'm making 50% on my deals, 50, not 15. Like, why would I be selling stocks? So I quit selling stocks to other people. And I looked at the real estate, and I said, there's got to be something more scalable than single family.
Right.
And I basically researched every asset class, and I came up with self-storage and mobile home parks as having the lowest operating expense ratio, which means the highest net operating income ratio. And I said, I'm going to focus on these two areas, and then eventually decided to really focus on mobile home parks, and it's been great. And pricing has gotten really intense the last 2 years because so many big players have gotten the space. I typically buy the broken mobile home park or the bruised one,
Right. That's where you can find the best deal, and you have a lot more value add. You have a lot more meat left on the bone, right?
Right. I can only handle a smaller number of those. They're not stabilized. So I can't do 10 turnaround projects at once, but I can do 2 or 3 at a time, and then, sell them. We've sold 4 or 5 parks in the last 2 years, buying some more and do it again. Got 3 in process right now that are big turnaround projects, about to go under contract on another one. So just kind of that's the game. I figured out mobile home parks are the highest profitability ratio of any real estate asset class that I've identified.
That's great. So, hey, let's talk about the due diligence, right? But before even due diligence, what steps do you go through when you receive an operating memorandum or a deal from a broker? What do you do?
Yeah, so basically I look, if it's an offering memorandum I see from a broker, real high level, I just look at, is this the size that I want? Is this the market that I want? So for example, I'm not looking to buy 20 unit mobile home parks, and I'm not looking to buy 500 unit. Because the 500 units are going to be either too expensive for me or really
too big,
too expensive, too overpriced. Because the big guys will pay; those will sell it.
Right, because everyone, wants to get the big guys, hedge funds, and whatnot.
I know I'm not gonna win on price. Right. So I can't buy the Austin, Texas 400 unit park, 95% stabilized. So when I dive in the OM, I like most people, I want to look at is private utilities or public utilities. Everybody prefers public. I look at the occupancy and see if it's stabilized. I probably won't bid on it because it's going to be overpriced for what I'm looking for. So I look for deals that have some occupancy challenges and then maybe some infrastructure challenges. I like stuff that's not sub-metered water because then I can sub-meter it, and then there's a value add there. Sub-metering is kind of a pain, but it's a good way to cut your expenses and make your park more institutional grade. I look at those things as high level. I eventually look at all the numbers. I read the whole thing, but as high level, I look at just the kind of deal in the regions of the country that I want to be in and the size that I want to be in. I look at the cap rate if they show it, or I'll calculate the cap rate and then see if it's in the ballpark of where I want to be. And then I look and see if the numbers are actuals or pro formas, because the common thing for brokers to do is to tell you, oh, look, it's an 8 cap. And you're like, wait a second, I did the math. It's a 4 cap. Like, oh, all you do is increase rents. Like, if it was that easy to double the rents, why didn't the current guy?
Why wouldn't you do it, right? So brokers are liars. The pro forma numbers and the broker deals, you got to not only take it with grain of salt, but like a bucket of salt, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And same thing when you're in due diligence. I mean, everything with the seller and the broker, it's Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. So it's like, I don't even trust. I assume they're lying and then I verify.
That's where you start. I agree. I was talking to one of the broker recently, and he sent me a deal, and the same thing. He said, "Oh yeah, this is easy 10 cap deal," and I kept looking at the numbers and even the pro forma. He said 10 cap. I wasn't even talking. In pro forma number, the taxes were not getting increased. There was no expense for property management. I'm like, how do you say this is a 10 cap, even if I'm raising a little bit of rent? So you got to be very careful.
Right. Yeah, that's the other thing. When I look at the OM, I look at the expenses and I've got a list of expenses for my pro formas, things that like advertising,
Right.
mowing, snow plowing. Sometimes those things aren't in there. So I heard of a big general contractor one time. He said, your budget doesn't get messed up because of a misprice. Your budget gets messed up because of a missed price, meaning you leave something out. So
Right.
brokers will leave stuff out all the time.
Right.
And I'm helping some other clients right now that I'm looking at some pro formas for them, and they do their math. I'm like, what about this? What about this? What about this? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Are you going to have a partnership tax return? Oh yeah, we need to hire a CPA firm to do that. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That's every year. You know, so anyway, that's kind of high level what I look at it in OM as I launch into my due diligence.
Yeah. So can you go through the due diligence checklist?
Yeah, I got my list I sent you previously. So each park is a little different, but there's some stuff that's high level. I mean, the important stuff that you really got to do is you got to get a phase 1 environmental. So from due diligence, you want to start getting bids on that. I get at least 3 bids from local players on the phase 1 environmental. You got to get a survey.
And I'm sorry, I'm going to stop you there, and because my listeners don't know what phase 1 environmental is or why is that important.
Okay, sure. So if you were to buy a commercial piece of property, any piece of property, let's say you bought a mobile home park, and you did not get a phase 1 environmental, you know, I'm not an expert at environmental engineering, so I walk around, it looks cool, it looks normal, I buy it. Well, what happens if down the road we find out there used to be a gas station or a dry cleaner or an oil tanker or some other problem on this property, and there's an environmental hazard, and it becomes known, EPA shows up, and they make you fix it, and it costs $5 million to fix it.
Right.
Anybody in the chain of title, you know, including the people who you bought it from, and before them, and even after you sell it, if you're in the chain of title, they can go after anybody for that $5 million, and they're probably going to go after people with the deepest pockets.
Right.
So the way that you protect yourself is you hire an environmental engineer to do a phase 1 environmental. It usually costs between $2,500 and $5,000 per property, and you do that during your due diligence period. And they will give you a huge document, 200 pages, but all you care about is the conclusion paragraph. It says, there are no recognized environmental conditions to the subject property. If you get that, you have what's called a clean phase 1. What that means is you are basically a buyer in good faith. If down the road there was this oil spill or this cancer problem or something, it's not your problem because you did your due diligence and you got this piece of paper. Sometimes the environmental report will say, we're not sure, or we think there is a recognized environmental hazard and we need to go to phase 2, which costs more money, upwards of $10,000 sometimes, and you have to do drilling and core samples, and it becomes messier. But at a minimum, you should get a phase 1 during your due diligence.
Yes, and great point, because I do know about phase 1 because I have some developer friends. So, the mobile home park I'm acquiring, which is closing next week, and we are recording this on August 7th. I got the phase 1 done. Even though the seller said, the title company said it's okay, I'm like, no, I got to get the phase 1, done and make sure there is no exceptions, right?
Right.
So the next checklist item you are mentioning, surveys. What's a survey?
So a survey, it's really kind of in concert with title. You'll get a title commitment from the title company. You want to make sure that the person that's selling it to you really owns it and make sure there's not liens. But the survey is important because it basically draws a picture, draws a map.
The boundaries, right?
A boundary, the basic survey is a boundary survey. That may cost $1,000.
Yeah.
But if the next step up is an ALTA survey, and an ALTA survey has certain requirements. One of the key ones is that it shows easements of record on a map. Because I bought a mobile home park in Illinois, and the ALTA survey showed the easements for the gas lines going directly parallel to my streets. Well, then I had them also do an additional survey item called the Table A item, and they showed where the exact lines were, the gas lines. Well, turns out the gas lines were in the wrong location. So I had to get in a fight with the gas company and say, move your lines because I want to use these vacant lots. And they said, no, you move them. It was about $105,000 to move them.
Wow.
And I was able to prove, because of my survey and because I was able to prove that they put the gas lines in the wrong spot at a convenience. And I told them, I said, if one of these houses that's on a gas line currently blows up and somebody gets killed, who's getting sued? Me and you, who's going to lose? The gas company that broke the easement. Your lines are in an illegal location. and they sucked it up and they spent $105,000 and put in all new gas lines for me at their expense.
Yeah. So basically, if you did not have the
So
survey, it could
without
have been
survey,
an
without a
issue.
survey, without title, yeah, exactly. So that's why you want the survey, and then also for setbacks for mobile homes, it's really important to verify where the homes are located relative to the property line and relative to one another. Now, sometimes it's not that big a deal. Like I was at a park the other day with the client, and it's clear that his homes are 50 feet apart. So it's not an issue. But each city has setback requirements, meaning how close you can put them together internally and how close to the edge of the property. And that delves into the next thing on this due diligence, and this is one that a ton of people miss, and it's a zoning letter. And the zoning letter is from the municipality, and it basically tells you your legal status, because most mobile home parks are not currently up to code. They're either illegal or they're legal non-conforming. Legal non-conforming is what you've heard before in quote grandfathering.
Right.
Basically, when you're allowed to continue as I am, I just can't exacerbate my problem. Well, the zoning letter is crucial for that. And then as part of that, you want to also look at see if you got any permits or licenses. You want to verify that the mobile home park has an operating permit. Some cities don't require permits. Some cities it's $50. Some cities it's $50 per lot. So
wow.
because that's a big variance in your budget.
That's huge. When you are getting $150 rent,
yes.
then you have $50 per lot. But it's still.
So that's important. And sometimes in addition to the city permit, you should see if there's any state permits. Sometimes there's, like in Illinois, for example, there's additional permits if you have a lagoon or well water sewer system through the state EPA or Department of Public Health. And then each municipality typically has a permit and a permit fee. But those are all absolute deal breakers. You never buy a property with a bad survey, bad phase one, bad title, bad zoning, or bad permit, unless you get it figured out due diligence. So those are all, there's no deal good enough for any of those problems. If you can't be, I'm buying it for 50 cents on the dollar. No, you're buying a problem. You're buying a headache. Some of those things can be solved. There are strategies to solve some of those, which they all cost money and time.
Right.
So those are the biggest due diligence items. The other due diligence items, and there's a plethora of them. I can read them off my list if you want, but things like you need to have, get your LLC. If you're doing LLC, get that set up. Get your bank account set up. Get loan approval. The appraisal process. So get your correspondence ready to send to the title company. Title objections. Get your correspondence ready to send to your new tenants. Get your leases ready. We always do things like pull the police record for everybody in the park. Pull the police report to see if there's any problem children. Pull sex offender records on everybody. Right. We order new signage. We get bids for things like roads and trees and infrastructure, home painting. And we like to do a ton of the turnaround work in the first 2 weeks, because people then immediately love us, and then they don't mind as much if you increase the rent. I had a park in Illinois, we bought it, it was horrible, in horrible condition. We bought it, rent was $122, we went to $180 overnight, but we didn't send the notice out for 2 weeks. Nobody even complained.
Wow.
The 50% increase. The next year it's $200, next year $220. No one's ever even complained, because they see the value we're providing. But we had to get all our ducks in a row during due diligence, so that the road crew, the tree crew, the paint crew, the playground, everybody's on site on day one, and it's just bodies everywhere. And so getting that done in due diligence, that's not crucial, like getting a good survey, getting a good environmental, but it really helps from a strategic standpoint.
Right. Execution.
And then if you need to order your signage and make sure you don't need permits. Like one time we put a new monument sign in on day one. Well, then we realized on day one we needed a permit for the sign. It was like $10, but it was going to take 3 days. So we didn't get to put our sign in for 3 or 4 days. So stuff like that is important. Obviously, getting bids, doing your CapEx budget, your capital expenditure, which is kind of your one-time cost. That's important to get done during due diligence. I continually refine my pro forma, my profit and loss, based on, by the time I know exactly what my snow bid is going to be per unit. I get a snow bid. Now I don't know how many times it's going to snow, so I have to guess or estimate on the snow bid for my pro forma. Right. But on tree removal, I get a one-time bid that's in CapEx. I can tell you, I had one deal I had $37,460. One of my investors like, how do you know it's going to be that? Because I got 3 bids. That's the best bid. So that's how you can refine your stuff. You want to figure out what your management plan is going to be. Who's your manager? Figure out if you need a handyman. Who's your handyman? Start to build your power team of local contractors, plumbers, road guys, mowing guys, all that kind of stuff. Let me see what else I got on my list here. Oh, you need the closing documents, like an assignment of rents, a bill of sale, a warranty deed, which typically the seller provides, but you need a review. Those are some key ones. You may need resolutions from your LLC that authorizes closing. You may have operational agreements with your investors if you have other parties.
Yes.
Sometimes I buy it's just me. Sometimes I buy up other parties. If I buy up other parties and somebody's a close relationship, then maybe I just need to do an operating agreement. But if it's somebody that if I'm really a promoter, I'm raising funds, well, then I have to do a private placement memorandum. Well, that's going to be
Right.
a more robust set of documents in addition to actually going out and raising the capital. You need to do that kind of stuff during due diligence. Looking at the seller's expenses and documents is crucial, especially private utilities or water. Those are, water bills. If you're going to sub-meter water, things like that, you need to order the sub-meter parts, and those are the big ones. Excuse me. There's lots of other little stuff that we do. You've seen my list. The bank may require new stuff. The investor may require new stuff. The city might. The title may cause you may need to read easements. You may need to do additional work. At some point, you're going to need, depending on your business plan, you may need to get your retailer's license and get associated with the manufacturers to get homes brought in, things like that.
Hey, so one question about the zoning. Let's say, because I hear about this a lot as well, that it's outside the city limits, so we don't need a zoning letter, or maybe the park has been around for 50 years and it's already zoned. How would that work? Or do you still
you still need to
get a zoning letter?
Whoever told you that was wrong. So you still need a zoning letter, and maybe it's from the county. So I'm working on a legal case right now in Illinois, and the address has a city on it. So I called that city, and they said, no, we're not in the city limits. You're in the county. I said, okay. So I need to get a letter from him telling me that, and then I need to get a letter from the county. I call the county, and then ask them what the zoning is. If the zoning, usually it's called a municipal code or the city code, or the code of ordinances, or sometimes they'll call it a uniform development code. Any one of those 3 or 4 acronyms will be where you look, and you want to go look at the code and see how onerous it is relative to your business plan. Like if you buy a park as a turnaround park, you want to make sure you can bring homes in. And depending on the state, there's case law that will support or weaken your grandfathering. But oftentimes you will find a municipality that is incorrect on their interpretation of grandfathering. And then you need to fight them. And depending on their position, and depending on how important it is to you, meaning how much it could potentially harm you, you may need to hire a lawyer pre-closing to get involved. You may need to threaten a lawsuit. And I worked with a guy one time that he already owned the park, and the city told him, no, you can't bring any houses in. He said, that's my business plan. I'm bringing in 30 houses. They said, no. They said, you got to be 5 years old or less. We want to do used homes. You couldn't find that many 5 years old or less.
Oh, wow.
So he's got to fight the city on that. And the city's wrong, but if it's for 30 houses, it's worth paying a lawyer. If it's another guy, it was 1 house or 2 houses, only vacant lots, and it wasn't worth, and the city wouldn't budge. The city was wrong. It was in my home state of Missouri. I know the rules. I own parks in Missouri, but the city wouldn't budge. And I said, it's going to cost you $25,000 to prove to the city you were right. He's like, it's not worth $25,000, but I got you. So he just took his lumps, and he got a zoning letter still, but the zoning letter was weakened, and it was not the ideal zoning letter. You always start with the Christmas list zoning letter with everything on it you can think of, but then eventually it might get whittled down. Half the time, the city just signs it and sends it back, which is baffling. But
oh, really?
They do. I had one last week. They just signed it and sent it back, and I was like, okay, great.
Nice.
It took an hour. Took an hour of work to draft it, do it. That's a golden piece of paper. You got to get it, no matter what. If the park has been around forever, it may predate the code. That's part of the zoning letter can say is the park exists before the code, so the code does not apply. That's still a zoning letter. You're going to want that when you sell. You're going to want that when you get financing. It's your get out of jail free card. You don't just trust the one city person you talk to, because that person, he or she may die or retire, and the new guy may come in and say, I don't agree. I got a zoning letter one time that says I'm exempt from the code, and the new guy comes in and says, no, you're not. And I said, here's my golden piece of paper. He goes, well, I guess you're right. His predecessor didn't talk to the city manager, didn't talk to the city attorney, just signed my letter that was my Christmas list letter. And, it's going to save me, it's worth $500,000 to me. And that's the difference in the value add that I would have lost without it. I mean, it's I can't emphasize, I'm biased because I'm a zoning attorney, right? But I learned from the best zoning attorney in the Midwest, 10%, 1% of what he knows. But I know enough on this topic to be dangerous, and it's crucial.
Hey, so Ferd, what are some of the landmines you would want to avoid while performing due diligence?
Well, I mean, a lot of them I just mentioned, the big reports. Other than that, I think just you want to really look at the seller's revenue, look at their profit and loss. If it's shaky, then look at their collections or during your due diligence, maybe extend your due diligence to see how many months in a row of collections they get, and then look at their bank deposits. You can see how much money's really coming in, because oftentimes they will lie. They'll say, oh, I have 30 lots and 29 are full. And then you look at the deal and it's like half are not paying. I'm not going to pay you. In most commercial real estate, at least mobile home parks in particular, it's traded or sold on a capitalization rate, which is basically a multiplier of the in-place net operating income. So if it's a 10 cap, that's going to be the NOI divided by 0.1, 10. So 10x multiplier. So if the guy says his NOI is 100,000, you're going to pay $1 million. If the guy's lying and his NOI is 60,000, you're going to pay $1 million. You want to pay 600,000.
Yep.
So that's a big one to look for. Those other items I mentioned are kind of landmines, but the biggest ones are, environmental, survey, title, zoning, permit. And if you've got a bank loan, you got to get your loan approval, your loan commitment, and your appraisal.
Hey, can you also talk about your best deal so far?
Yeah, my best deals I still own, or I'm still in the process of turning around. But I mean, business. Most of mine are similar. Luckily, they've all been good. I've done about 20 projects. I've never lost money. So far, so good. I just closed on a property that we sold about 3 weeks ago. It was a mobile home park in Illinois. Bought it for $135, and it was 65 lots, about 30 occupied, about 15 paying. We brought in, and we owned it for 2 years. My dad and me are the two owners of it. And we brought in about 22 houses in 2 years, renovated them, got everybody else paying, redid the roads, put in playground, cut down trees, put in some decorative fences, painted 20 of the houses in the park, pushed the rents to 122 to 180 to 200, and we just sold it for over $900,000.
Whoa!
So I mean, we put another 200.
Right.
We had about $550,000 between equity and debt on the bank loan. But from a cash perspective, I only had about 70 grand cash in that deal. I paid cash to buy it, 135, then later recapitalized. I had about 70 grand in the deal, and we made a profit of $400,000.
Nice.
So like, why am I buying? How's your mutual fund, right? That's why I'm not buying stocks, right? I mean, you do a good job, you make 8 to 12%. What's my IRR, my internal rate of return? What's my cash on cash to turn 70 into 400?
And then don't forget about the taxes, right? On the stocks, you got to pay the taxes right away. Here you are able to depreciate it for a while, right?
Yeah, the thing is, the beauty of mobile home parks, you can do some depreciation and cost segregation studies, and you can write stuff off faster. So I'm currently doing a 1031 with some of that money, and I think I'm going to contract today on a mobile home park in Missouri and use some of the proceeds for that. So we won't even pay tax right now.
Nice.
If we do pay tax, it's a long-term capital gain, which is going to be less than ordinary income tax rate. I bought other properties
15%. Yeah.
Paper losses on. So I mean, I think mobile home parks is the best and brightest idea out there from an investment standpoint.
Hey, so do you have an example from your deals or someone else's deals where they missed the due diligence and they had to pay hefty fee, or they had to, spend pretty large amount of sum to correct the issues?
Yeah, actually, there's one in Springfield, Illinois, a big national operator. They, during their due diligence, did not recognize that Illinois is a HUD state, which means for new homes, you have to install them to HUD standards, which means you have to put in roughly 3 feet of concrete, which depends on the frost line. You got to put in concrete piers. You have to do an anchor tie-down system, and you have to use a licensed installer. And it adds about $10,000 to $15,000 per lot to do this. These guys brought in 80 spec homes immediately, bought them, installed them, put them in place, put them for sale. And then the city came by and said, you didn't put the concrete in right. You just did pier pads for 6 inches. Like, what are you talking about? You go, you have to do a HUD set. They're like, what do you mean? So they just whiffed on 15 grand 80 times. Now they got to move the homes and then put them back. So they're paying even more money. So that's an example. I sold the park to some guys one time. I had a lagoon. This was so long that during expired, I had it pending. I didn't miss my deadline, but these guys should have said we're not going to close until the permit's approved. They didn't even know there was a permit. They closed. 2 weeks later, I get the permit in the mail. It got approved. Luckily, right?
Right.
They could have been screwed. Instead, I go, hey guys, I forgot to tell you, here's your permit. They're like, oh, thanks, we forgot about that. So in that case, they whiffed, but they got lucky, right? Better be lucky than good. So I could come up with probably several more stories, but yeah, there's a park, a big time national operator is 2 blocks away from a park I've got in near Kansas City, and they didn't get the zoning letter. They looked at the code, and the code says 15-foot exterior setbacks. The homes that they brought in could only be 60 to 66 feet. My park, 2 blocks away, between the front of the street and the back fence of the neighbor's property, I had about 76 feet 1 inch. I got the city to sign my zoning letter saying I had 0 setbacks. I have sold 25 76-foot homes in the last 18 months. This national operator that owns over $500 million in mobile home parks, they've sold 5. They brought in 15 right out of the gate, but they brought in 60-footers. Nobody wants a 60-footer. They can get a 76-footer. But these guys read the code and said, somehow, big-time operators, somehow read the code and said, oh, we must have 15-foot setbacks. So that means they couldn't fit the 76-foot homes.
Right.
So as a result, I'm just kicking their butt because I fought the zoning code and they didn't. So these guys don't even know why I'm kicking their butt. They're just like, well, we just follow the law. You fight the law.
Welcome back to Wealth Matters Podcast. I'm chatting with Ferd Niemann, and we just went through the due diligence checklist for mobile home park. Ferd, are you ready for fire round?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's go. Would you be changing any business or investment strategy after coronavirus?
Not too much. From an investment strategy, I think MHP is the way to go. Other multifamily, if it's not high-price multifamily, just like working class housing, I think is the way to go. The real only operational changes is we've done some more virtual tours and done less open houses because of groupings of people together. But for the most part, we're still doing maintenance. We're still doing leasing and sales. We had a lot of demand actually because of COVID. I think COVID is going to be the best thing to happen to MHP business because it's going to shine a light on the weaknesses of the other asset classes, which is a strength of MHP, that it's affordable housing. People need a place to live, and maybe the skyrise apartment can wait. They don't want to live there. They want to live in our place.
Right. Favorite real estate?
I have to live in our place.
Right, exactly. So favorite real estate or finance or any other book?
Anything by Tony Robbins. I think Tony Robbins is the best. He's got a book called Money, Master of the Game. Most of the rest of his books are personal development type books. I've been to his seminars and stuff. Everything from him is great. Real estate specific, I really like Gary Keller.
Oh yes, The One Thing.
The Millionaire The One Thing is a great book. That's not only real estate, but he also wrote The Millionaire Real Estate Investor.
Yep.
And I thought that was a really good book to understand kind of the math, if you will, the formulas.
Yes.
So that was probably my favorite book. I've got about that many real estate books right there.
Oh, nice.
I've read 100 of them, but that one stands out.
Yeah, no, I got the same collection, man. So any tool or website you recommend, which you use for, let's say, your business?
Every once in a while I use for the website, I follow Mobile Home Park Mastery, Frank Rolfe, and then he's got a forum with him and Dave Reynolds at Mobile Home University, and then just questions they answer. That's a pretty good tool. I use that sometimes. Other than that, I don't really do a lot of other podcasts or website stuff. I mean, I've read some bigger pocket stuff in the past. For me, the tools, I say become a master in Microsoft Excel, and that helps you in your performance. I've used Excel for a ton of stuff. And then I use Google Drive just as a
Yes.
document repository in Dropbox. And I back my stuff up, and then I can access it on my phone, and I can access it from my other office, and my team can access it. So that's not really that complex, but a lot of people don't do it. They don't use
Yeah.
it. They're like, oh, I'll get that one back at my desk. I've got it in a file folder somewhere.
No, I can't live
Okay, but
without
that's
Google
not
Drive and Dropbox.
right.
Those are must.
Yes. And then Rent Manager. I use Rent Manager for my
Okay.
bookkeeping, which is infinitely better than QuickBooks or Microsoft Excel for keeping the books and running reports.
Oh, you definitely need a software, be it Rent Manager, Ffolio. There is another new software coming out as well from one of the guys I know, and they are building the software specifically for small investors, which would be
Okay.
so yeah, it would be interesting. It's called Flowmatics. Yeah. Any advice for beginner investors?
Okay. I would say just kind of grow slow. I see a lot of guys just like buy, or chase deals, and then I think they're going to have a lot of them are going to have problems down the road operating them. This is acquire. People are raising money right now. I'd say grow slow. Maybe become a junior guy on an apartment or be on a deal, like be the junior. And I just think be a pessimist as far as like what could go wrong. Sit there and
Right.
think what could go wrong. And I spend a lot of time reading tax and law and finance stuff and just trying to get smarter all the time. So those are some, I'd say, don't go buy your first property until you've read 10 books. Get it. You'd rather learn from somebody else's mistake than your own mistake and your own money. So if you're educated before you take the actions, you don't have to lose money in your first. I hear people all the time like, well, you pretty much lose money in your first deal. Or I heard somebody on a podcast the other day like, yeah, I mean, first level home park, I'm just trying to do it for the experience. I'm not trying to make money. I think that's crazy. But you get your experience from somebody else and then make money on every deal.
Right. So how do you give back?
I give back. I mean, I'm Catholic, so we tithe. I mean, we give away 10% of all our income through to the church or other related charities. So that's one way to give back financially. I've spent a lot of time mentoring other people. I've done like Big Brother program as a mentor, and I've done lots of just kind of chats with people on real estate, and I give lots of quote free legal advice. People, my friends, are like, oh, you're a lawyer. Can you help me with my DUI
Right.
or my will or something
Oh,
unrelated?
wow.
So I'm not really that kind of lawyer, but I guess I know more than the non-lawyers on those topics. So I'll fumble through with them, but I do that. I try not to do it, but it seems like every month. And I'm in a men's group, a Bible study, and we're supposed to do a service project every month too. So what have you done this month for service? And I feel like I'm always like, well, I've done this much free legal advice. What else? But that's not really service because it's not. I'm doing it out of obligation. Seems like more than charity. So I need to get a better attitude. I need to get a better attitude on it, or start saying no, maybe.
How can my listeners reach out to you?
Well, I think if I can find me on LinkedIn, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, Ferd Niemann. My email is ferdIV@thirdivproperties.com. I don't have my podcast going like you, but maybe I will. I'm thinking about starting one, maybe the MHPLawyer.com. But overall, I'd say you can find me on LinkedIn or hit up Alpesh. He's got my number.
Yes, I'll put that in the show notes. Thank you so much, Ferd. I had a lot of fun chatting about mobile home park and the due diligence.
All right. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.